Hi there, my name is Steve Gerhardt, and this is the Yonagi Observer. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching, because this is part 2 of Where to Eat for Otakon. We're going to talk about transportation in this particular video, which is going to be nice and not nearly as scary as being safe like the last video, which is an important video to watch. So if you haven't seen it, the link is down below. But let's talk about transportation. By transportation, I mean not just getting to the city, but actually moving around inside of the city. So let's get started. Alright, transportation. So, you're coming to Otakon, right? Okay, so you're coming, and there's various ways that you're coming in. So let's start with those of you who are far enough away that you actually have to fly in. So you're going to be coming into a couple, 2-3 different airports. It could be coming a little bit farther away, like BWI, which is near in between Baltimore and DC. You could be coming into Dulles, Reagan, whatever. So here's the things that you want to keep in mind as you come in on the flight or before your flight. So if you're flying in, this is probably not your first time flying, so we're not going to talk about all that stuff. But what we're going to talk about is when you land. So when you get to DC, the closer the airport is to DC, the better it is. But you know what? Airfare is expensive, so get the cheap airfare. It might be a little further out, but that's okay because you're still saving money, right? So, but still, the things are still the same. So what you want to do is that when you get into the airport, before you fly out, contact the hotel that you are going to be staying in and ask them if they have a shuttle service. Sometimes the hotels have shuttle services built into the prices of their rooms. Ask about that. Look online. See if that's a thing. Because if it is, then you can set up an appointment for the shuttle bus to be there for you. And that's one less thing you have to do. All you have to do is find the shuttle bus. Follow the signs to get to the shuttle bus. You get on the shuttle bus and they drive you in to where you need to be. So if you can do that, do that. It might take a little bit longer than an Uber or a Lyft or a cab, simply because it's a shuttle service, which means that other people are going to be using it as well as you at the same time. But it's cheap. It can be free, as in part of the cost of the room, if you know what I mean. You don't have to pay additional. But if you do have to pay additional for you, it's worth the money, okay? Because it's probably still going to be cheaper than getting an Uber, a Lyft, or a cab. And you have a certainty of actually getting to your hotel, right? So let's talk about getting Uber, a Lyft, or a cab from the airport. Now, obviously, you can schedule a cab. There are cab services out there that do the scheduling thing. They're a little bit more iffy than a hotel shuttle service, but still something worth looking into. Here's the thing. With cabs in particular, is that they have a running list of costs. A Uber or Lyft just basically gives you one single rate for you to take your bags, throw it in the trunk, whatever fits in the car, you fit in the car, and you go. And that's the rate that you pay. For a cab, you're going to be paying not only for that rate to get you from A to B, from the airport to your hotel, but you're also going to be paying for how many pieces of luggage you're going to have to pull in. Are you, do you have a lot? Do you have a little? It also depends upon time, like how much time it's going to take. How many miles is X amount of money, and then it gets more expensive as the further you go along. So cabs can be very expensive. But cabbies have a knack of knowing the city and knowing the shortcuts. So they kind of have a little bit of an edge on the Uber and the Lyft guys insofar that they, like if you were to say, I need to go to the Marriott at such and such, they'll know where you're talking about and they'll get you there. And they'll get you there probably a little bit more quickly. So that's the benefit of having a cab. They get you there a little bit more quickly. But again, if you're going to do that, schedule it ahead of time. So before your flight leaves, see if you can schedule it. Give yourself time to get to the place where, you're going to meet the cab. Ubers and Lyfts, greatest invention ever. You have an app, it's on your phone, you call them in, you just have to wait for however long it takes them. They have, like cabs, peak hours. So you might be coming in during a peak hour where the cost is outrageous. That's the problem with Ubers and Lyfts. They can be very, 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 very expensive depending upon when you come in and what's going on around you. So just keep that in mind. What is nice about airports these days is that they have designated areas for Uber and Lyft pickups. So again, just follow the signs or go to the help desk and say, hey, I'm getting an Uber, where do I go? And they'll be kind and show you where to go. Again, this is something that is easy to do, might be expensive, but it's easy to do. The downside is that you might get a driver who might not know DC that well, because Uber drivers and Lyft drivers are not professional drivers like cabbies are. So they might actually take a wrong turn or two, and you might be late getting to your hotel. Not the end of the world, but still, it's time, right? So just be aware of that. So it's easy to go flying in from an airport to get transportation out. Now, there's another method. Some of these airports, like Dulles and Reagan, will have shuttles to either or both Amtrak commuter lines, which usually is going to be a MARC train, or the Virginia equivalent, which we'll get into later on in the video. Or you can get to a metro station, or it'll take you to a metro station. If you don't have that much luggage, like let's say you really only have a backpack and maybe a small carry-on, that might be the way to go. That's the cheapest, most efficient way to do it. So if you can get a shuttle service from the airport to the train, which will take you to Penn Station inside of DC, at which point you'll get onto the metro to go wherever it is that you need to go. Or you can get a Lyft and an Uber from Penn Station. So we'll talk about metro later on. But that's a cheaper route. It takes a little bit of time, so give yourself plenty of time. But it doesn't cost that much. And you'll need a Metro fare card, by the way. And we'll talk more about that later. So there are those options as well. What's the best option about taking a metro, or getting a shuttle to the metro, or taking a MARC to the metro? Is, generally speaking, you can count on when they're going to show up at the station and when they're going to get there. And the costs of it are probably going to be a little bit cheaper than getting an Uber or Lyft or a cab. Again, probably the best, if you could swing it, is the shuttle service to the hotel. But if you can't, I would say second best is MARC or Metro, or the Amtrak or Metro lines, and then following it up with Uber, Lyft, and cabs. So there you go. If you're flying in, welcome, and those are some choices that you have that I think are reasonable. Do not rent a car and drive. When we get to the driving portion, you'll see why. It is a nightmare. Okay, so let's talk about bus transportation within DC. I don't think you're going to need it, but I'm going to present it to you very quickly, just in case you might, because there might be a couple reasons why you need to ride the bus. So basically, it's public transportation. One set of bus lines are paid for, like the metro buses. You pay your fare and you go to where you need to go. There's also a free bus line that a lot of cities are developing these days, or very cheap bus lines that have limited number of stops on their lines, and they only have like four or five lines to them. One of them, go down to the links below in case you're interested. I do know of at least one stop of a free bus. I want to say it's the orange or yellow line. Again, take a look at the link down below to figure out which one that is. That gets you within a block of the convention center, so there is that. And of course, the metro buses and paid buses, they'll get you right there to the convention center. You just have to deal with the bus. So the downsides of taking the bus, they fill up pretty quickly. So if you have cosplay, the more complex your cosplay, the harder it's going to be to take the bus, because there's a very good chance you might have standing room only, and getting on and off with all your gear and stuff for your cosplay can be very, very challenging. The other part about the buses in general is that is where the homeless go in case of bad weather. They just kind of get on the bus, particularly the free buses, and they just ride the line until the bus driver decides to kick them off. So you kind of have to deal with the homeless on buses. The only real upshot, a couple upshots to this, is that either the bus line that you pay for, the metro buses, or the free, obviously the free buses, they're pretty cheap. You don't have to pay a lot. They're going to be cheaper than a cab or an Uber, certainly. So there is that. And they're really only useful in case you're in a place where you can't readily walk to a metro stop, subway stop, and you don't feel like paying for it. So paying for it like an Uber to get you there. So that would really be the only upshot to having to using the bus. So anyway, I just want to do a quick mention on the buses, just in case one of you might happen to be living in an area where you just can't get to a metro subway station very easily, in which case that's really your best option. So yeah, buses, whatever. Don't drive. That's the best advice I can give you when it comes to driving to Washington, D.C., around Washington, D.C., inside of Washington, D.C., getting to Otakon. If you don't have to drive, then please don't. Save yourself the aggravation. I say this year after year after year. This is a problem that goes back in decades. A big part of the problem is that Washington, D.C., the people who live around what's called the D.C. metropolitan area, most of the people there that live in those areas work in D.C. in some fashion. So you have Northern Virginia people coming in. You have people in Maryland, like PG County and Montgomery County, also coming in. So there's massive congestion going on at almost all points during the day. Like there's really nonstop congestion, car congestion. The other part of the problem with 495 itself and 270, if you're coming in north through 270 through Maryland, is that there is always construction. An exit or two is always shut down for reasons. There are always accidents, plural, never one, multiple. People in Maryland don't know how to drive. Virginia drivers just do whatever the hell they want, and it's a nightmare. So if you have to drive to Otakon, what I suggest is that you give yourself 1 to 2 hours in additional driving time, because that's where you're probably going to hit snags in trying to get to your hotel. If you have a day pass and you're trying to get in, get a good night's sleep, get to bed early, get up early. And when I say early, I don't mean getting up at 8 o'clock to leave at 9. I'm saying you get up at 5:30 a.m. to leave by 6:30 a.m. I'm not joking. Okay? That is in your best interest if you insist on driving in. Get a map book. Invest in a map app, because you're going to need it. You're going to be thinking, oh, this is the way I'm going to go in, and then you're going to, I can almost guarantee you that a road's going to be shut down, or there's going to be construction, or there's going to be 4 lanes, what it says on the map 4 lanes, but for some reason it's all shut down to 1. All right? It's a nightmare. The place is a freaking nightmare to drive around. Once you get inside the city, it gets worse because it's on a quadrant system, and this is where you really need to take good attention to a map, whether it's a ADC map book, whether it's on your phone. However you need a good map, get a good map, and give yourself 2 or 3 different routes to get into your hotel. As I've said before, sometimes you might have a protest that might be right in the middle of the way that you're going to get in, so make sure you have an alternate route. Give yourself plenty of time. I'm sorry, I just can't stress enough how bad it is. There is no magic wormhole. There is no special secret side street that you can just zip down. Those things don't exist consistently. I've had one person tell me, oh, well, I know this great road and this way to get in. I got in there once and I'm going to do it again next year. Next year, the road was blocked. Okay. So, just to let you know, the only thing I can tell you is that to avoid all this nonsense is to actually drive between the hours of 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. Not joking. Those are when the roads are basically deserted, and you'll be able to get to where you need to go. Okay? Once you get to your hotel, this is the next important tip. Once you get to your hotel, hopefully you'll know ahead of time whether or not it has a parking garage. If it has a parking garage, pay the fee, leave your car there. Do not, do not, do not, do not, do not think you're going to drive from your hotel to Otakon. That is not a thing. That is not going to happen at all. You are going to be so late to whatever it is that you want to go to. DC traffic is horrible. And you have to deal with the Quadrant System, which I'm going to explain. It's bad. It's just that bad. So, you say to me, well, what do you mean I can't drive to Otakon? Oh, you can drive to the convention center where Otakon's going to be held. You're not going to find parking. At all. Nowhere. It's that kind of thing. And if you do happen to find it, it's by pure chance of luck, and maybe the chaos gods have smiled upon you and thought that maybe you have suffered enough and gave you a space. Because that's the only way you're going to get one. Okay, that's going to be anywhere near close to the convention center. This is where Metro becomes your best friend. I'm going to be talking about Metro later on in the video. Get a Metro fare card. Keep your car at the hotel. Use Metro to get in if you're far enough away that you can't walk to the convention center. Do not park your car. If you do decide, for whatever godforsaken reason, to actually drive and park your car somewhere on the street, I am going to tell you right now that the signs in DC are very confusing and often contradict each other. I'm not joking. There are plenty of places where people just look at the signs, or just looking at it and going, I can't understand what this means. Can I park here? And if you have to ask your question, just get back in your car and find another place, because odds are you're going to get towed. Not just a ticket, you're going to get towed. Don't want that, because that is a freaking nightmare to get your car back. You might as well kiss the rest of Otakon goodbye at that point. Here's another thing about DC that a lot of people don't know about. The Secret Service plans routes to convey the president, the vice president, various secretaries, the people whom they have to protect. Every day, the night before, however they do it, they plan out the roads that they're going to drive on, so that they can get to A to B more quickly and keep their charges safe. What does that mean for you if you decide to park on a street, on a residential street? A tow truck can come down if the Secret Service will identify the streets that they want to drive on, call tow companies, and tow all the cars. Yes, they will tow your car. You've done nothing. Maybe you parked in the right space. You filled the meter in. If that's where the Secret Service wants to go, your car's going to get towed. And there's no way to know. That's the other part. You're not going to know. You're not going to know. So if you had the bad chance, the bad luck, to have that happen to you, there's nothing for them to tell you, to find you and say, oh, by the way, we towed your car. You're going to come back to what appears to be an empty space and go, where's my car? So you're going to have to spend the next 2 to 3 hours calling the DC police, calling the parking authority, trying to find your car. Then you're going to find it at the tow lot. The upshot is that you won't have to pay for it. They don't feel that part of it is fair. So you're not going to have to pay any fines or anything. You're just going to have to figure out how you're going to get to the lot before it closes to get your car out. Usually these lots close between 3 and 4 p.m. If it's a Sunday, forget about it. You're not going anywhere till Monday, okay, without your car. So that's why I say, if your hotel has a parking garage, park your car, pay the fee, keep it there. It's worth doing that. If you happen to see that there are parking lots, maybe not associated with your hotel, but they are there for those purposes and they allow overnight parking, make sure the sign says overnight parking. Otherwise, you'll get towed. It's a city. That's how they make their money. Then park your car there. Okay? So very, very important. If you have to drive into the city, give yourself time to get to the city, and then once you get inside, give yourself time to get to your hotel. And if you have access to a parking lot that you can pay for the weekend, put your car in there and leave it there, and use Metro if that's what you need to do. Again, if you're kind of on the outskirts and you don't need to come in, like me, like I will actually have access to a friend's place. So we're going to leave the car at his place and we're going to ride on Metro in. So, in and out. So that's, yay. Okay. That's the best way to do it. So if you live within the DC metropolitan area, you already know this trick and you already know better than to try and drive, and you're just going to take Metro in. So if you are able to do that, like if you're able to get a hotel, which quite honestly might be cheaper in Northern Virginia or in Maryland, but it has good Metro access, that's a very good route to go. The hotel's going to be a little bit cheaper, and you're going to have Metro access, and you're not going to have to worry about your car, right? So that's the best thing that you can do for yourself. As you can tell, I am very serious about this. Even though I'm kind of joking around a little bit, I do mean it when I say if you don't have to drive inside of DC, please, for the love of Ghibli, don't drive in DC. Alright, so let's talk about quadrant maps. And I'm going to have some pictures and stuff for you to take a look at as I talk. Okay, this segment is very, very important, even if you don't watch the rest of the video. If you watch this, then this is kind of key to moving around and navigating Washington, D.C. Two things. We're going to start off with street parking. I know I talked about it some in the driving portion, which I still say find a parking lot, find a parking garage. If your hotel has a parking lot or parking garage where you can just park your car for the weekend, do that. Do not try to drive your car around the city. Now, if you've got a day pass and you just want to park on street, there are apps that can tell you like Panda, that will say, oh, hey, I have a space here, you pay X, and then you get there and you probably have to pay a little bit more, like on the parking meter or whatever. So those things do exist. The problem with those things is quite often they're very specific, and there's a time limit to them, to when you can get there. If you don't get there on time, they kind of release it to somebody else. So be aware of that. And also, usually those apps are around parking spaces that are already paid for by a occupant, meaning that is actually their space. Like, they pay for that specific space on the street. So just keep that in mind. It's not like, oh, here's some free parking over near the convention center. Odds are you're not going to get that. It's very hit or miss on those kinds of things. Also, my suggestion to you in terms of street parking signs is don't get a parking lot, go to a parking lot, go to a parking garage, leave your car at the hotel. If you have to drive in, you're going to get gouged for a parking lot for like 1 day parking. You're going to get gouged. I'm sorry, there's no way around it. So be prepared to pay upwards to anywhere from $50 to probably $175, depending upon where in the city that you get that parking garage or lot. Some are cheaper, some are even more expensive. But generally speaking, if you're going to a hotel and the hotel allows you to park there, even if you don't have a room there, the rates are usually a lot more reasonable. You're talking between $25 and $50 for a day for day parking. Kind of depending upon where you go. So, yeah. Sorry, DC kind of sucks about that. Okay, moving right along to a different type of signage, street signs, and the whole quadrant problem of Washington, D.C. Okay, like I said, I know it's silly to have to explain how to read a road sign, but just let me go through the steps here. So let's say you're looking for 302 Constitution Avenue Northwest. So by looking at this sign, we see the number 300 that tells us we're on the 300 block of Constitution Avenue. Now, what's most important about this sign is in the lower right-hand side of that sign where it says NW. That means Northwest. That means the quadrant that you're going to be in. Because while there is a 302 Northwest Constitution Avenue, there also might be a 300 Constitution Avenue Southeast, which may not connect to each other. Yes, you heard that correctly. I'll get more into that a little bit later. So you can see why that little two letters are so very important, because if you're in Southeast, you're not going to find 302 Constitution Avenue Northwest. So that's why you have to pay attention to that little those two little letters right there. So as you're walking, riding metro, taking the bus, whatever, make sure that you're paying attention to these signs because it's very, very important. It's easy to get lost if you don't take into account that DC runs on a quadrant system. So now let's talk about that quadrant system. Okay, so I'm going to spare you the long, dumb story as to why the city is in a quadrant system. Moving right along. So here are the quadrants. Northwest, Northeast, Southwest, Southeast. As you can tell that they are not equal in size. They were supposed to be. There's supposed to be more land on the other side of the river there to the left where it's pink, and make one big giant square or whatever. But anyway, so this is the quadrant system for Washington, D.C. This is why you have to pay attention to the road sign and pay attention to what quadrant is issued on that road sign. So like when we were looking at the Constitution Avenue sign, we saw that was in Northwest, so we know that's going to be in that quadrant, right? So here's the thing. Let's make up a street, Unagi Street, okay? Now let's say that you want to be in the Unagi Street that's in Northeast, here, right? Now, there might be an Unagi Street in Southeast, and the two might connect to each other, like one runs right into the other. But there might also be an Unagi Street in Northwest, but it's not connected to the other two. But it's still Unagi Street, but just Northwest. And there might not be an Unagi Street in Southwest. Are you starting to see why it's so important to know what quadrant you're in and to pay attention to the street signs? This is very important. This is also important why if you have to drive in, if you're on a day pass or if you're driving into your hotel, make sure you know which quadrant you're going to, which street you're on in which quadrant. You could be in a totally different part of the city if you don't pay attention to the quadrant part of the signage or the address that you copy down. So this is why you have to be as accurate as possible with this quadrant system. So yeah, unfortunately, you're going to need to do a little bit of homework before you drive into the city or fly in or whatever. So this is for any mode of transportation, by the way. It's not just driving. It's walking. It's metro. It's everything else. You have to know which quadrant you're going to be in, where your address, where you want to be, wherever your hotel is. So, yeah, unfortunately, that's the quadrant system. It's easy to get lost here if you don't pay attention. Alright, so this is the last part of the video where I'm going to talk about trains and metro. Probably the two best ways to get into DC and to move around in DC, in particular to get to Otakon. Alright, so let's start off with the trains. Washington, D.C., it's a major city. It's got a major train hub. It's Penn Station. All trains leave the Penn Station. Now, you might be coming from, if you're riding the train from like Pennsylvania or West Virginia or whatever like that, you might be traveling by Amtrak. That's fine. Take Amtrak all the way into Penn Station. Just be aware of the rules that Amtrak has, particularly with luggage. There's only so much luggage that you can bring on with you. Depending upon what train you are and what time you go, there might be some fees you have to pay to stow your luggage in a particular area. But there are rules and regs for that. The links will be down below, so don't worry. If you need to look at it, it'll be down below. So Amtrak, good. It gets you where you need to be. Now, for those of us who live in Maryland and Northern Virginia, and even parts of Central Virginia, actually, there are commuter trains that go into DC. So you don't have to pay for the Amtrak ticket. The Amtrak ticket is fine, and riding the train is fine. It's just that it costs more obviously than a commuter train. There's a little bit more bennies to an Amtrak train as well in terms of bringing on your gear and stuff like that. Commuter trains are just that. They're commuter trains. Are not meant to go that far, right? They're just supposed to take you to your job and back, or maybe you're a tourist, or you just want to go into the city for the day or whatever. That's what they're designed to do. So if you have a lot of luggage, probably a commuter train might not be your best bet. Commuter trains also have very limited availability in terms of the weekend. Now on Thursday, Friday, if you're coming in on Thursday or Friday by train, use the commuter trains. They're generally cheaper, and they get you to where you need to go. They just have, of course, a lot of stops along the way. So actually, if you want to take a nap, there you go, because your end destination is going to be Penn Station in Washington, D.C. Again, I'll have links down below. For example, I usually take the commuter trains in. I usually pay, like $30 or something for a round trip ticket, and there you go, like during the week. Once you get into Penn Station, once you get off the trains, depending upon where you are in the station, what you want to do is you want to head straight towards the metro. There's the metro station right underneath it, right underneath the train station, and you can go there to where you need to be. One of the nice things about Penn Station, there are restaurants in there. There are, quick buy items, like, in case you're like, I need a tube of toothpaste. It's DC, so it's going to be overpriced, and it's the Penn Station, so it is going to be overpriced, so just be wary of that, but you have access to things. So there are restaurants, so if you come off the train and you're just like, I'm so hungry, there's McDonald's, there's Au Bon Pain, you get it, you can get your coffee, you can get your Egg McMuffin, whatever. So that's kind of nice. So it's, like I said, it's the main hub for it. Amtrak goes into it, all the commuter trains go to it, and that's where you're going to catch Metro. So let's talk about Metro a little bit. Metro, of course, for those of you who don't know, or if you're coming to DC for the first time, that is the DC subway system. It is, generally speaking, nicer than other subway systems. Some subway systems, like New York City, where it's just like those trains are trash. The Metro system is a little bit better. They're not as trashy, nearly as trashy. As a matter of fact, they have been upgrading the trains since 2017, and their service has gotten a lot better since the dark days of the early 2000s. So one of the things just to keep in mind, as with anything else when you come to a city, just kind of check on your cell phone, whatever, as you're coming into the city, and making sure that whatever metro stop you need to use is active, that a protest hasn't shut it down or something like that. Okay, so just make sure that you're looking at it. The metro maps are all over the place. Again, I'll have the links down below so you can take a look at it. And as a matter of fact, before I show the trains and metro video at the end of this, I'll put up a map for a few seconds and you can take a quick look at it. There are multiple different color lines of metro, so it kind of depends on where you are in the world. Most of these lines go outside of DC into the respective areas, like Maryland, Southern Maryland, or Northern Virginia. So that kind of makes it nice. So like if you're on a day pass and you live in Montgomery County, Maryland, you can just hop on you can just park your car at Shady Grove and you just take it in, right? So in this video that I'm going to have coming up, I'm going to show you actually how to navigate from the train to the metro and what stops you take from Penn Station on the metro line to get to Otakon. Okay, so you'll see that. But one of the things that you're going to need to have before you're able to get on the train is one of these bad boys. Okay, so this is the card you need, and you can buy them at the metro stop. So whatever metro stop you go to, like if you're getting one of these, it's usually prepaid. I think they force you to put on $10 on here, and then they just spit this card out and it's yours. And the best part of this is that it's reusable. This particular card I've had since Otakon 2017. That's what I got it for, and I've had it ever since. So you can just keep reloading this card. You don't have to keep getting a new one every single time. Good thing to have, especially if you think you're going to be coming around DC a lot more. So like I said, it's gonna force you probably put $10 on there as a prepay, and honestly, that should get you to where you need to go. You'll see before you get onto the train a rate chart. It'll tell you peak times. It'll tell you not peak times, the station that you're at, the station you want to go to, and how much that will be for a one-way trip. So there you go. And then you just go over to the kiosk, you put your money in, you can use credit card, you can use cash. It's a pretty easy system to use, quite frankly. So make sure that you can get one of these. Used to be that you actually had to order them in the mail or go to a specific Metro kiosk in places like Penn Station or Metro Center or something like that to get them. Now they have kiosks that just spit these things out. So you just look for the kiosk that says issues fare cards. Then that's the one you want, and you're good to go. All right. So remember, need this to travel. All right. So Metro is usually, generally speaking, nice. It's clean. During peak hours, it does get crowded, so watch that with the cosplay. I don't think you're going to have to worry too much about it on Saturday and Sunday. It doesn't get that crowded on the Metro. Again, just be mindful of any stop closures, because sometimes that happens. Now, Metro does have specific hours. Again, I'll have the link down to Metro down below, and depending upon where you are in the world that you're using Metro, just kind of check the link, put it on your phone, maybe use the Metro app and put it on your phone so that you have that up-to-date information. So really all that's left is to tell you that Metro is probably the best way to navigate the city. If you can get one of the cool things about Metro is that if you get a hotel that's kind of far away from the convention center, if you decide to use Metro and your hotel's within a block or two of a Metro station, you're good. You're golden. You're fine. As long as you have a good access to a Metro station, you're going to get there in plenty of time. There will be, unless you're already on the green-yellow line, you're going to have to make some transfers. I'll show you that in the video coming up. So usually if you're coming from east to west, you probably want to get off on LaFont Plaza and take it north to Mount Vernon Square, 7th Street. That's the actual stop for Otakon. Mount Vernon, 7th Street. Okay, so that's the stop you want to get off on. It's going to put you right underneath the convention center. But just remember, when you get up at the top, you're going to see doors. Those aren't the doors you go in. You're going to have to continue walking around the building to get to the front to get inside. But that is an exit, so as the con is going, you can actually walk out those doors and go right down the escalator right into the Metro Center. And that's really nice and easy and accessible. So there you go. There it is. I'm going to show you the video. And I'm using an older video again, simply because when I went down this year, I stayed over at a friend's house, and he and I took the Silver Line in, and which was really nice and easy. It took about 40 minutes to get there. So instead of spending $65 on an Uber Lyft drive, instead of spending $65 on an Uber Lyft ride into town, I spent $7 $7 on this thing, and it got me to where I needed to go. So this is going to be an older video, but it is still accurate and still has all the things that you need to know. So just kind of take a watch at it, and that'll show you visually what you need to do, where you need to go, particularly if you're going from Penn Station to Otakon. So that'll give you a good idea of how Metro works. All right, thanks for watching. If you got any questions, look down below into the chat section. Write me there, or if I'm posting this links in some other social media site, if you have questions there, let me know, and I'll try my best to answer them. All right, guys, I'm getting excited. Otakon's getting nearer and nearer, and hope to see you there. All right, have a good one.
Yep.